The last echo of Lara never remembered her mother's face, just the smell of cheap perfume and the sound of a slammed door. She was 5 when her mother left, but the memory played in her mind like a scratched record, skipping on the same painful note over and over again. Sometimes she would lie in bed, eyes fixed on the peeling ceiling, straining to recall even a whisper of her mother's voice. But it was gone, just like she was. Her father remained. A bitter, angry man who spent more time at the bottom of a bottle than he did looking at her. When he did, his gaze was something she feared. His hands were rough, not just from years of labor, but from the things he did when he was drunk and there was no one around to stop him. She learned early how to be silent, how to shrink herself to the size of a shadow. The bruises were easy to hide, the memories were not. At night, she listened. The creak of the floorboards, the way his breathing changed when he was too drunk to make it to her door, or when he was just drunk enough to try. Those were the nights she pushed the chair under the handle, pressing herself against the farthest corner of the room, waiting for the sun to save her. She stopped pretending her mother would come back. If she had cared, she would have taken Lara with her. By 16, Lara had learned the currency of survival. Men were easy. A smile, a touch, a whisper, they gave her what she wanted, or at least what she thought she wanted. Love. Affection. A moment of feeling something other than emptiness. Her first time was forgettable, but unforgettable in the worst ways. A boy from school, older by a year or two, behind the dumpsters near an abandoned lot. His breath was thick with beer, his hands impatient, his voice coaxing. She didn't resist, because this was how it worked, wasn't it? You give them what they want, and they stay. But when it was over, he pulled his jeans back up and left without looking at her. She sat there, feeling raw and used, telling herself that she had chosen it. That made it easier. But every man left. Some after a night, some after a month. Some hurt her, some ignored her, and some gave her promises that tasted like lies before they even left their lips. She thought she was in control. She thought sex was power. But power faded when the act was over, leaving her lonelier each time. It became a hunger, an addiction, something she chased like a drug. It didn't matter how many, how often. The high was never enough. She tried to stop, to slow down, but the hollow space inside her swallowed every attempt. She wasn't the only one. She found others, women just like her. Instead of saving each other, they sank together. The men blurred into one another, names forgotten, faces indistinguishable in dimly lit rooms. And when sex wasn't enough, there were pills. Then needles. Then days missing from memory. She woke up one morning in a roach-infested motel, looking into the mirror at a face she barely recognized. Skin pale, lips cracked, eyes sunken. She was aging. The young, desirable girl was gone, replaced by someone she used to mock. An old whore. A used-up body no man would want. The realization crushed her, heavier than all the men she had ever let in. She had 3 abortions, each one taking a part of her she could never get back. Now she could no longer have children, not that she had ever wanted them. But the fact that the choice was gone burned deep. As if life had finally stripped her of the last thing she could ever give. Then came the sickness. The tests. The diagnosis. Cancer. A punishment she could not escape. Her body had betrayed her, rotting from the inside just as her soul had long ago. And yet, there was Paul. Paul, who had nothing to gain from her. He was not a client, not another desperate man looking for a thrill. He was no saint. Lara knew he had his demons. He was always trying to save people, as if saving others would somehow save himself. She often wondered if he saw his reflection in the broken souls he tried to fix. He never judged her, never asked for anything. Even when she screamed at him, hit him, spat in his face. Even when she told him she was beyond redemption. He stayed. She didn't deserve him. She knew that. But he stayed anyway. He was the reason she had almost made it out. He helped her through withdrawal, through the endless nights of shaking and sweating, the memories clawing at her mind like vultures on a corpse. She wanted to believe she could be better, that she wasn't doomed to be a ghost in cheap motels, trading flesh for a fleeting moment of comfort. But the past does not let go so easily. One of her old clients found her. He wanted what she used to give so freely, but her body was too weak, too broken. She said no. Paul stepped in. The struggle was fast, brutal. A flash of steel. blood pooling on the cracked floor. Paul lay there, gasping, his hands soaked in red. She held herself, shaking, whispering apologies over and over. She had taken so much from so many people. But Paul had given. And given. And now, he had given too much. He died. Lara sat there for hours, waiting for the morning light to tell her this was real. As dawn broke, she stood, stepped over his body, and walked to the window. The city outside was alive, indifferent to the ghosts within it. She lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. And then she walked away.